Hi, I'm Adam, the Intrepid Eater, and today we're going to be making Middle Eastern inspired flatbreads. It's a super easy recipe. There's no yeast involved, there's no waiting involved. You can have this done in about half an hour. You can use pretty much any ground meat as long as it's lean, and it just makes for a wonderful supper. So let's get started. Okay, so first things first, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees. From there, we're going to start with our bowl. And we're going to put 2 cups of all-purpose flour, just white flour, in. There you go. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of salt, thereabout. 3 teaspoons of baking soda, and that's going to help be your leavening agent instead of yeast. About 3 teaspoons of sugar as well. I'm just eyeballing it because this recipe does not matter. If you're a little bit off, you can just kind of eyeball it. It's such an easy recipe. I'm also going to be adding to this one a little bit of Za'atar, and Za'atar is a Middle Eastern spice blend made from thyme, sesame, and sumac, and often salt. And I want that to add some flavor to the flatbread, so I'm going to add that. You could add fresh chopped parsley or Italian blend spice, anything like that would be delicious, or you can just leave it as is. Okay, I'm going to take a spoon and just mix that in, everything all together. Make sure especially the baking soda gets incorporated into the flour. Like so. Then I'm going to go in with 2 cups of Greek yogurt. You want the nice thick Greek yogurt for this, not the Balkan style, or regular style. I'm just going to go all in with it, and then I'm going to mix it in. At first it's going to be kind of lumpy and sticky, but eventually that flour will become hydrated with the yogurt, and it's going to form a dough. And you're going to want to work it for about 5 minutes or so. And this is where most of the hard work comes in for this recipe. And it's honestly not that hard at all. I'm going to keep pressing down, picking up any of that loose flour in the bottom of the bowl. From here, I'm going to switch over to my hands. I'm going to do kind of a knead slash getting the rest of the flour in. So as you can see with my right hand, I'm going to be gripping the bowl with my dominant hand anyways. And with my left hand, I'm going to be flipping and pressing down on that dough. You can see it's starting to become more like a traditional dough ball and less like just loose shaggy flour. So I'm just going to continue doing that for a few minutes and just get all of that flour and everything incorporated. And it's starting to get a little sticky, you can see on my hands. If that's the case, go in with a little more flour, flour up your hands, dust a little flour on top of the dough ball, just a pinch at a time, like that. Okay, so now we got our dough ball. I'm going to flour my surface quite heavily. I don't want it sticking to everything, so I'll just get lots of flour on there. Got my dough, I'm going to break it into about 4 pieces. If you want smaller flatbreads, break it into more than 4. If you want larger ones, obviously less. And I'm just going to start pressing down on it. Make sure that flour's underneath, get it into kind of a circular oval shape. I also have a bit of a rolling pin, for some rolling pin action here. You want it relatively thin. It's going to rise a little bit, so you want to roll it relatively thin, but not super thin. Once again, this is an easy recipe. It's not meant to frustrate you or stress you out. So if your flatbread's a little higher than mine or a little lower, it's not a big deal. I got my baking tray here. I'm gonna spread some flour on that too, because I don't want the flatbread sticking to the baking sheet. Throw that right there. Start on the next one. Might add a little more flour onto my work surface. And same deal, I'm just gonna press down on it, use my fingers, kind of press down and push at the same time, in a motion like so. Flip it, do the same. This one's a little oddly shaped. I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm not gonna get the scissors out and cut these into perfect shapes because it's just a very rustic, easy recipe. Yeah, it's looking pretty thin. Throw that there. I'll do the other two in the next batch. So we need a topping for this. And what I have is some lean ground beef. You could use ground venison. You could use ground chicken or turkey. Ground pork, you just want it to be lean because usually I prefer a fattier grind. But on this, the fat's going to render and it's going to create kind of a pool on top, and I don't want that. So I'll go with the lean or extra lean for this recipe. So I'm going to add a pinch of salt, some pepper, and I'm not really using measurements. Once again, I'm just kind of going by feel, but if you're a measurements kind of person, I'd stick to about half a teaspoon or so of each of these ingredients. I have Aleppo chili pepper, and these are just nice, slightly spicy, kind of fruity chili flakes. I really enjoy them. If you can't find them, you could use paprika or smoked paprika instead, or you could use the kind of the Italian chili flakes, but you want to go a little less with those because they're a little spicier. Also have dried mint, and that just adds a taste to the Middle East to me for some reason. It just brings me right back to my travels there. It's got this really unique flavor. I might be putting some fresh mint on the finished product too, and when you combine dried mint and fresh mint together in the same dish, it creates something really beautiful. I have some freshly ground cumin here. I'm going to go with about half a teaspoon again, once of that. And then I'm going to do some fresh garlic. So, I like it really garlicky, so I'm going to go with 2 cloves, I think. Maybe 3 cloves. You go more or less, depending on your own preferences. Same with the spice. If you like it really spicy, you can go in with lots of spice, lots of chili flakes. If you don't, then don't. So what I did is just chop the tips off the garlic, and then I'm going to press down with the flat of my blade and the palm of my hand, and that's going to allow me to take the skins off the garlic very easily, so I'm not sitting there picking at it all day. Okay, I'm going to make the pile out of them, and then I'm just going to go and mince them. And to mince them, I'm just going to cut them thinly, turn them, cut them thinly again, and repeat. You want a relatively fine mince on the garlic for this recipe, because you don't want to bite on a big chunk. You want it just to kind of blend in with the meat. If you didn't have fresh garlic, you could use garlic powder. It's not going to have the same effect, but at least you'll get some garlic in there. I think garlic's pretty necessary for this dish. Now these flatbreads, you can't really find them in the Middle East because they're just inspired by Middle Eastern recipes. I kind of got the idea for these from both Turkish and Lebanese and Levantine recipes. The Turkish one is lamacun. That's a flatbread spread with meat. And the other one, which I've enjoyed quite often, is manakish, which is usually cheese or za'atar, but can also be meat. And you can find those in Palestine and Jordan and Syria and in Lebanon. So what I'm doing now is I'm just scraping that garlic across my cutting board with the flat of my blade, and that just makes it even more fine. Not completely necessary. I'm gonna go all in with that into my bowl. So I have a can of tomato paste. I should prefer the tubes sometimes, but my grocery store didn't have it today, so I got the can. And I'm gonna go in with about 2 heaping tablespoons of tomato paste. That's going to allow everything to adhere, and it's going to create a nice flavor, nice rich tomato flavor to go along with this. I'm going to mix all of that together very well. So that's looking pretty good. From here, you could go with different fillings. Like you could add in different herbs. You could go with mint or basil or parsley. You go with sumac or more za'atar, chopped chilies. You could put feta cheese in here. Any different types of cheeses you want to make it more like a pizza. I think this time I'm gonna go with a little bit of parsley. And I just got some curly parsley here. You can go flat leaf or curly, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to chop that nice and fine. I'm going to add that right in. Because this is such a loose recipe, it doesn't really matter if you go a little crazy with it, or if you choose not to go crazy with it. If you just want to do a very basic beef and garlic mixture with a little bit of cumin or whatever and go nice and light, that is up to you. You can do that for sure. These are the type of recipes that are great for weeknight meals where you might not have all the ingredients, but that doesn't matter because you can make do, you can make it fast, and everyone's gonna love it. Okay, so now the fun part. We're going to take the meat mixture here and we're going to spread it on to the flatbreads. I find that using the back of a metal spoon works great, and it works even better if it's wet. So I like to dip it in water and a spoon, about 1/4 of my meat mixture, and I'm just going to spread it flat onto this flatbread. You want to be pretty aggressive with it. Once again, you're pushing down. You want it kind of to incorporate a little bit with the bread. There's no need to be gentle here. Just get in. If you're sticking, get a little more water on your spoon. Leave a little space around the edges. Make sure there's no holes anywhere in the meat. Do the next one. And traditionally in Turkey and the Middle East, this would probably be a lamb mixture they would use on the types of flatbreads that they make there. Venison would be wonderful due to its leanness. Venison or moose or elk or any of those kind of ungulates. But for just a quick weeknight meal, beef works great. To make sure that they're not touching. And from there, I'm going to throw them into the oven. Okay, so those are going to be in the oven for approximately 8 minutes. All ovens vary, so you're going to want to keep an eye on it, so don't just walk away. Check on it after about 5 minutes, and then make sure that the meat has been cooked all the way through. So while we're waiting for that to happen, we're going to make a sauce for it. And it's going to be a tahini sauce. So I'm going to take 1 clove of garlic. If you're sensitive to garlic, you might want to skip this step and use a very small clove because it can be quite pungent, but I like it that way. So we're going to do the same style of cutting for that garlic, mincing it nice and fine. And I'm going to scrape it once again across my cutting board, get it nice and smooth, throw it into the bowl. I've got a lemon here. I'm going to cut that lemon in half and squeeze half a lemon into the bowl as well. Okay. I'm going to add a pinch of salt and a pinch of sugar to add a little bit of sweetness. Tahini can be a little bitter for some, so the sugar helps to counteract that. I have a big jug of tahini. I'm going to give it a little shake because it likes to settle and separate into solids and oil. I'm going to be adding about half a cup or so. There it is. Take a fork. I'm going to start stirring that all together. And you'll notice as you stir it that it starts to get more and more solid to the point where it actually starts to turn almost into a brick. So what happened as a really liquidy beginning now is much more solid, and that's not gonna drizzle very nicely. So what you do is add cold water a little bit at a time. So you're gonna add a little bit of cold water, and you're gonna stir it in, get it completely incorporated. And you see here it's starting to loosen up a little bit, but not quite enough. So I'm gonna add some more water. If you add it all at once, you're gonna be messing around, adding tahini, adding water, trying to get it to the right consistency. So I just like adding a little bit at a time and finding that perfect consistency for drizzling, which is what I want to do with it. And that's looking much better. You can see that it's got enough liquidity to it, is that a word? That I can drizzle it on to the flatbreads. I would say that's perfect. Just gonna give it a little taste to make sure it's balanced properly. It's perfect. So it's been 8 minutes. I just pulled them out, and it looks like the meat is cooked through, but the flatbreads themselves are still pretty doughy and they haven't browned yet. Underneath, they haven't started turning brown at all yet. So I'm going to put those in for another 5 minutes or so. Okay, a couple more minutes and our flatbread is done. So as you can see, the meat is nice and cooked on top. The bread is nice and golden underneath. And you could eat it like this, no problem. It's tasty, it's quick, no problem. But I like to dress things up a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is add a few fresh ingredients that will really make this pop. So I got a red onion here, and I'm just going to take a couple slices of red onion, scatter them on top. So I got a little bit of red chili. I love these long red finger chilies because they're so mild, but they still have that chili flavor. And I find they add a lot of color and flavor and a little bit of heat, but not too much heat. It's not like those Thai bird's eye chilies or habanero peppers or anything. I'm going to sprinkle those on top as well. And then I have some mint leaves here. Just some fresh mint leaves. Give those a slice. Scatter those on top. Got our tahini sauce that we made earlier. Give another stir, and I'm gonna drizzle some of that on top. And when we first were making the dough, if you remember, I put za'atar in to the actual dough. I'm gonna do a little tiny sprinkle on top for visual effects more than anything. And that is our Middle Eastern style flatbread. It's beautiful, it's quick, it's easy, it's infinitely changeable. The amount of ingredients doesn't really matter. You can use like a pinch of this, a handful of that, or you can stick to the actual ingredients, which I'll list with this recipe. To eat it, you can eat it with a fork and knife if you want, but I like to fold it up and take a big bite. And it's delicious. So that was a recipe. I hope you make it at home and try it out yourself. Once again, I'm the Intrepid Eater. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or at theintrepid.eater.com. We'll see you next time.